Right now, we want to take the response to the president's response to the issues raised about maize importation of to poultry farmers. We have the DG, Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria, Onalo Aqua. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, you've seen that tweet by the president, which is him saying, look, we can't import now, but this is what we have. And then we're also hearing all kinds of things, whether there's going to be importation or no importation. Where do you stand?
Thank you. Good morning.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity to clarify some issues about maize vis-a-vis the poultry industry in Nigeria. Yeah, there have been a lot of issues about maize and its importation into the country, which is not the subject matter or the focus of the Poultry Association of Nigeria. The focus of the Poultry Association of Nigeria has been the scarcity and near absence of maize for use in the poultry industry. And that is what brought about the whole issue. Maize has been the principal raw material used in the production of poultry. Maize constitutes almost 70% of the cost of poultry production. And in the first quarter of this year, we discovered that, especially from May, June, we discovered that there was no sufficient maize for use in the poultry industry. So we decided to look at it vis-a-vis cost. Maize was selling around April, May, between 85 and 90,000 naira per metric ton. But it will surprise you to note that today, maize is being sold at 170,000 per metric ton. In some places, you cannot even get them. So we cried to the government that, look, this is the situation of the poultry industry. We've been able to stabilize the poultry industry in the last 15, 20 years. And within a short period of time, the gain so far recorded was being eroded. Investments were going down. And we said, look, since there was no maize, sufficient maize, and the price was skyrocketing, government, please, can you release some quantity of maize from the National Reserve for us so that it will be able to sustain the industry till the advent of the new harvest in November, December? And then the government said, oh, well, they had little resources, little quantity of maize in their reserve, and then they will see what they could do. And then we told them, between the period of what you could do, can you give us an ample opportunity to bring in the poultry industry requirement of maize between June and December? Based on this, we wrote to the Minister of Agriculture. We also wrote to Mr. President. Within the period, it came up that maize was placed on the import prohibition list. And they said, well, we people could not import maize for reasons best known to all of us. I want to place it straight that the Poultry Association of Nigeria has never been in support of the importation of maize into this country, because all of us are farmers. The hurdle of even importation is a lot of trouble. But in the absence of no maize and the little one available, their prices was above ceiling. Then we now say they should give us the ample opportunity to bring in the requirement for 6-7 months, so that by the time the new maize comes in and then the poultry industry could make use of them, then we will now go into the patronage of the local maize. And the government says no. But we're also very surprised that some of our members got, just in the last few days, in the last 10 days, we saw a lot of approvals flying all over the social media, that some certain quantity of maize has been granted to some of our members. And now, those maize are being sold to our members. We are not against it. But our intention of writing that approval should be given to the association was for us to bring in maize. Since the association is a non-governmental organizations, we are not there for profit. We will be able to bring it at the cost, at the landing cost, and then we'll be able to sell to farmers at no interest, at no profit at all. And then that will be able to. But today, the maize that is being brought in is going between 150 and 160 and 170. So we are not against it. And we were not for importation. But in the absence of no maize, and then the little one available, the prices, every poultry farmer is operating at red. All their numbers are at red. Nobody is making profit. And the moment everything is shut down, a lot of people lose their investment. And then the protagonist of importation will now say, okay, fine, local poultry producer cannot produce for this country. Let's start bringing in products. And that is what we've been fighting against. And so far, the government has been very, very generous. As of yesterday, by 4 p.m., I got an approval of 5,000 metric tons of maize being released from the strategic grain reserve for the association. As little as it is, we'll be able to give it to especially the local farmers at the state's level, and then the big producers will be able to contend with whatever they are able to get from those
Mr. Akwa, just one moment. If you kindly clear,
to bring in.
If you could kindly clear the air, you just said that your association got approval of 5,000 metric tons, but what the president announced is 30,000 metric tons. Could you educate us?
I think that is very important for me to make a clarification. By yesterday, I received not less than 300 calls saying that Mr. President tweeted that he has released 30,000 metric tons to the poultry industry. And I was so glad and was so happy. I had to follow this up to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. First, I started by calling the Director of Strategic Grain Reserve, and he told me, no, what was approved was 5,000 metric tons. And I said, okay, fine. This is the new news trending. Mr. President has tweeted, and it's all over the news. So I was coming for the 30,000 metric tons allocation. So I drove to his office, and he showed me an approval of 5,000 metric tons. And I said, fine, can you give me the award letter for this 5,000 metric tons so that I will be able to now say, okay, there is a confusion between what the president tweeted and what has been given to us. And I will tell you that I come to this studio with that approval letter of 5,000 metric tons to the association. So if the president actually tweeted as we've understood he has tweeted, then we'll go back to the ministry and then request for the balance of the 25,000 metric tons. So that is what it is, sir.
Well, we would really love to see that letter, just to be clear, what this is about, because the president clearly tweeted 30,000 and we all saw it. But then, the Minister of Agriculture spoke about 5,000 metric tons. So we'd really love to see, that letter. But you know what? Now that we have 5,000, at least we're sure of that 5,000. The question now is, how long will that last, poultry farmers? Because I understand that the need, what you need per month is even maybe more than that. So how significant is this release for you?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. We need to clarify some things. The poultry industry at the moment, at our production capacities, need an average of 4.2 to 4.5 million metric tons of maize on annual basis. 5,000 metric tons have just been released to the association, and I will bet you that even one of our strong members, the Olofa who spoke yesterday, that's the chairman of Yamfi Farm, Nigerian Limited in Ilemona in Kwara State. I'll tell you that 5,000 metric tons is not sufficient for his farm alone for 3 months. Then we haven't spoken of the big feed millers like the Premier Feeds, the Olam Feeds, Grand Cereals, Animal Care. These are guys that produces an average of, collectively, what they produces for a whole year is between 5 to 6 million metric tons of feeds. And 60 to 70% of the requirement for this feed is maize. So 5,000 metric tons is just like a drop of water in an ocean. But we are very appreciative to government of the little quantity they say they have. They've been able to graciously release, approve 5,000 metric tons for us. We'll go back to them and then work out the logistics of how our members can leave this one from them. We are very gracious to government.
Well, just looking at the scale of what is left is, mind-boggling. But you know what? Clearly, there's a shortfall and there's a need. You just said it's a drop in an ocean. So there's still a huge need. I know that we produce locally, and then there's the call for importing also. And you said also earlier on that, if this goes on like this, the proponents for importing will say, yes, let's import since we can't meet our needs locally. So approval has been given, according to reports, for 4 companies to import maize into the country. How will that affect, because I know there's a need, so that might meet the need, but also people that have invested locally might lose their investment. So how do we really go about this?
Yeah, the approval given to the 4 companies has been circulated all over. I will tell you is for 225,000 metric tons. These 225,000 metric tons will be able to cushion the devastating effect we are currently having. But I will tell you that these 225 metric tons can hardly do for the next 1 month. But still, that is still okay. We are happy that this has been able to come in to assuage the suffering of the masses. Now, in the last 8 weeks, the prices of feed has tripled from 2,000 metric tons to 3,000 metric tons per bag. The prices of feed is going to as much as 4,500 metric tons of 4,000 to 5,000 metric naira per a 25 kilogram bag. Now, what it means is that the big guys that have large operations cannot completely shut down. But I will tell you, without mentioning any fact, that most of the small farms are shutting down now because it becomes inevitable for them, very, very difficult for them to feed their birds, and they are unable to generate income that will sustain the farm. Because of the level of income of most of Nigerians, egg to them is luxury. And we cannot arbitrarily increase the price of egg. You cannot arbitrarily increase the price of chicken per kilo. So we are in trouble. Most of the farms, even the big ones that are producing at loss. So that is the cry. And I also say this. I'm also a farmer. A lot of us are farmers. Nobody is interested in importing maize. In the last 3-4 years, the price of maize or supply has been very, very stable. But all of a sudden, we don't know what happened. There was no maize.
Well, at the moment,
available, the price was on top.
What we see, just a minute, what we see from read from that notice from the CBN is that they wanted to control importation and encourage local production. That's why they allowed those 4 at the moment. But you say that is grossly insufficient. Even the 5,000 or the 30,000 tweeted by the president, 5,000 release, also grossly inadequate. So it's either the CBN doesn't have the appropriate information or there's something missing. So tell us, from your perspective, being the practitioner there, how much should the CBN allow for importation if they really want to encourage local production?
Yeah, thank you so much, my brother. What we expected, like the letter we wrote to the Minister of Agriculture, we followed it up with a letter to Mr. President. And what we did as administrators of this industry was to copy all the necessary agencies of government, including the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, if the Central Bank had that responsibility of approving or not approving importation, what we expected of them was to call us to a dialogue. We are very good partners. We work together. But nobody was invited. There was not even a single courtesy of replying to our letter. And that is why we are saying, if we had been invited onto a roundtable discussion, we will now say, okay, fine, we need 4.5 million metric tons on an annual basis. Let's appropriate it by 12. Then we'll now look at the remaining months of the year left for us to use this. Then we'll now be able to tell them, we want to give approval to 3, 4, 5 companies. We are free. Give it to them since they are our members. But this is the quantity we needed. And then we wouldn't have been what we are in now.
Well, there is this saying in Africa that before the corn came, chickens fed on something. So in the challenge that we have now, 4-point-something million metric tons, there's definitely a gap that cannot be filled, even with all the importation that, we are talking about. So is there any way that your association and those in the industry can think of some alternatives to chicken? You have said 70% of what your birds feed on is corn. But are there alternatives? What are the alternatives that you think those in the industry can consider?
Yeah, thank you so much. We are talking of energy. The energy source, the basic energy source for poultry feed is maize. It is either maize or it is guinea corn. Neither of these prices is affordable at the moment. Then researchers and then nutritionists are also working on alternative energy sources. But the level of inclusion into the poultry feed is very, very limited. People work on cassava chips. Cassava is also very expensive at the moment. Now, cassava chip has limited inclusion rate. Now, if you are going to also use guinea corn also has limited inclusion rate. Even the price of guinea corn, sorghum, today is also on the rise. So what we are trying, some years back, we resorted to using what we call feed-grade wheat. But the same feed-grade wheat is also being imported into this country. So researches are ongoing by the Agri-Research Institutes, by Raw Material Research and Development Council, and we are in working collaboration with them to see how alternative sources of other energies could be provided. But I'll also tell you this, Nigeria has a very good, favorable agroecological climate. Our land is fertile for maize. So what we need to do is that most of these maize that we are talking of 11, 12 million metric tons being produced on an annual basis in this country are from family farms. So we need to do a lot of investment into commercial agriculture where you can produce maize on a large scale, produce soya on a large scale. Today we are talking about maize. Now a lot of people now must have gone into the farming of maize this season. By next year, we might be contending with soya. So we need to sit down, have a developmental program, give target time to ourselves. Poultry industry want to produce this. What is going to be your maize and soya bean requirement? Then the people in the crop sector who could come together and form a synergy. Part of the problem we are having is individualism. Some people are doing their own, other people are doing their own. We have common objective. And common objective means that we must come together to plan and meet our targets.
Okay, let's see if we can do this, Mr. Akbar. Imagine you have a blank check, addressed to maybe the CBN, the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. President, because you've talked about some of these plans. Some of them are mid-term plans, long-term plans, but clearly there is a need now, and you need to meet those needs. So how much of grains, how much of maize would you say you need right now in the coming days for the coming months up to maybe December or when the harvest is ready? If you had a blank check, what would it be?
Oh, I will be very glad to see that the Twitter of Mr. President releasing 30,000 metric tons of maize to us is achievable. Then we'll go back to government and say, give us a letter of approval for the remaining 25,000 metric tons. Then 30,000 metric tons with what some of our members have brought in through the importation, then we'll be able to manage until the new maize comes out in December. And then by December, January, we'll be able to have the needed moisture that we'll be able to use this because it's not only the maize coming out. The maize has to dry to a certain moisture content that you can use it in the production of poultry feeds.
All right, then. So we'll be hoping for the best on these matters because, yesterday while we focused on it, the president tweeted, so clearly he's interested to see that this is sorted. Well, we'll be looking to see what next and how we can come to a solution. We have to thank you for talking to us today, Mr. Onalu Akbar, DG Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria.
Thank you so much.
All right, then. So maybe you could take this as a poll question if you can get the answer. Remember, Ayo just said the African proverb, before maize came, chickens fed on something. If you can tell us what did they feed on, you might be in for something. So tell us. We'll be back in a moment.
Chairman's got something for you.